In this video, I'm going to be explaining you HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Using HTML, you can create beautiful websites, and it is the very first thing that you should learn if you want to get into web development. The web design services industry, which comprises companies that provide web design services, including the graphic and user design, is expected to grow at an annual rate of 6.6% over the next 5 years. It has also seen a rise of 6% in 2019 with a total of whooping $38.3 billion. I know that I've thrown a lot of numbers in there, so let's get right into it. Let's get started with HTML and let's create the very first website of our life. Before we start, I want you guys to hit like on this video and tell me where you are from. That way I can reply to your comments and I can give you any useful resource like cheat sheet or any link or anything that I come up with in future. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Web server serves you the request in the form of HTML pages. That HTML page contains CSS and JavaScript, where CSS is used for designing and JavaScript is used for front-end logic. For example, if you want to perform any computation in front-end, you need to use JavaScript to get that done. CSS is used to design the web pages to give the HTML skeleton a good shape. This tutorial will cover everything you need to know about HTML, and later, after you have learned HTML, you can move towards CSS and JavaScript, which will be the next steps if you want to become a professional web developer. HTML is like a skeletal system of human body. CSS is like the skin and the muscular system that gives your body good shape. And JavaScript can be seen as the brain of the body, wherein you write the logic of what happens when a button is clicked, or what happens when somebody hovers over something, or what happens after a certain amount of time. All that logic is written using JavaScript. So HTML for the structure, for putting in the bare bones to the web page, CSS for designing, for giving a good look to those bare bones, and JavaScript for client-side scripting. Having said that, let's start with HTML and see what it has to offer in terms of putting a website together. Alright guys, enough of talks, let's get started. So I'm going to be starting off this by downloading VS Code. Now VS Code is a code editor. This is a program that we are going to be using to edit our code efficiently, and there is something called extensions in VS Code that can actually help us out to make our coding experience better, and we'll see this once we download VS Code. So what you have to do is click for download for Windows, and once you click this, you'll see this installer, and quickly you can open this installer. I know you know how to install a software, so I'm not gonna be focusing much on that. Just click on I accept the agreement, click on next, and click on next, and keep clicking on next and install until this program installs for you. I'm gonna be waiting for this to complete, and I'll be back once this program is installed on my computer. Alright, once you finish this installer, it's prompting you to start Visual Studio Code. I'm going to be clicking on finish, and as you can see, this starts off. I already had this installed in my computer, so I'm going to be closing this because I already have a project open. I'll say file, and then I'll click on close window, and this will close this window. And what I'll do now is create a new folder. I'll right click and then I'll click on open with code, and my Visual Studio Code will open up. Now you can use this program to make HTML files. I'm not gonna be focusing much on how to use VS Code. You can explore that later. I'm clicking on new file, and I'm gonna be writing index.html. Now there's no need to only name your files as index.html. You can choose a different name for your files as well, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm just using index.html, and people have been using this name a lot. Now what you can do is you can use this Emmet abbreviation, and once you use this exclamation mark by clicking shift and 1, you'll see this boilerplate. So this is an amazing feature of VS Code, and this is why we downloaded VS Code, and this feature is called Emmet. You can use such kind of abbreviations, and we can make our coding experience very smooth. We can code any kind of HTML very fast, quickly, efficiently, happily. Let's get started. So let's now try to understand what all this means. But before we understand what all this means, we will have to execute this and we'll have to open this using a browser. Our browser will take care of executing this file. What I'm going to be doing is I'll be clicking on extensions and then I'll write live server. What is live server? Live server is a Microsoft Visual Studio Code extension that can help you launch this HTML file live, and you can actually enable this live reload feature. You'll not have to save this file and manually reload. You can actually use this extension and keep saving your program, and the updates that you make to your HTML file will be reflected into your browser. You'll not have to go click your reload button again and again. We'll see how this works in action. I'm going to be clicking this cross button and then I'm going to be closing this Explorer, and we will understand what these lines mean. But before that, I'm going to be writing something inside my body, and I'll say this is body, and I'll use Ctrl S to save, and then I'm going to be clicking this go live button. Once you click this go live button, you can see that it gives you some warning, and later it opens this development server for you on port 5500, and you can change your content here, and all those changes will be reflected here. So if I change this to body 2, let me change it to body 2 and Ctrl S, you'll see that these changes are reflected here. But before starting off with HTML, and before starting what HTML is, what body is, what head is, I'm gonna be explaining you about this boilerplate. So the very first line in your HTML code is the doc type, and this specifies that this file is an HTML file. This is the significance of the very first line in the HTML file we write. Then second line is the HTML tag. So these are the mandatory tags that you have to use in any web page you create. First one is the HTML, and once you have an opening tag, you'll also have to have a closing tag. So this might sound confusing to a beginner. So let me explain you by creating a new file and typing all this manually. So I'll say manual.html. You can use any name of your choice. All you have to do is use .html extension and you should be good to go. So what I'll do is I'll say HTML. Firstly, I'll copy this doctype line. Now this doctype line is optional, but you should always start your HTML files with this doctype HTML. And then you can say something like HTML and then a closing tag HTML. Now for me, my Visual Studio Code is giving me a closing tag whenever I try to write an opening tag of HTML, because it is smart enough to figure out that I'll have to close HTML if I open it. Now the tag that is inside this HTML is head tag. So I'll say head and I'll press enter. And as you can see that Visual Studio Code is again smart enough to figure out that I'll have to close this heading tag if I open it. So as you can see, HTML head, and inside that I'll say title, and then I'll say this is a title. Ctrl S to save, and after head comes body. I'll say this is body. So this is how the HTML file looks like. First of all, you have this doctype HTML declaration, and then you have this HTML lang is equal to en. Now lang is equal to en is not mandatory, it's optional, but again, you'll have to open your HTML tag to start your web page. Then comes head tag, where you specify your title, you specify all your meta tag. Meta tag is meta information about your web page, and you should not worry much about it at this point in time, but we'll talk about meta tags. Meta tags are used for SEO, which stands for search engine optimization, and that is also an important thing. So we'll get back to this meta tag once we are done with other important stuff. Now once you have this head tag completed, your body tag starts. And inside your body tag is the meat of your web page, wherein you will type everything that will show up inside your screen. So if I say this is body 2, you can see that I have this is body 2. If I say this is body 3, I'll have this is body 3. So basically HTML is a markup language for web pages. It is a way of telling a web browser what to display, when to display, where to display, how to display. So this is a way of us talking to web browser, telling web browser what to do, when to do, and believe me, it is very easy and you are gonna enjoy learning HTML. Alright, so now what we'll do is we'll start off by creating a paragraph and a heading. Now HTML comprises of different tags and different tags have different roles. So I'm gonna be introducing you to the very first tag, which is heading tag. So there are 6 heading tags in HTML: H1, H2, H3, H4, H5 and H6. If I use H1, this is H1. I'll say this is H1. And then I'll use T capital, and then I'm gonna be using my Visual Studio Code shortcuts. You can copy this line and paste it again and again. And then what I'll do is I'll use my multi-cursor functionality from VS Code. If you press your Alt key down and you click on different places, you'll find this find these multiple cursors. So I'll make this 2. Then once again I'll do the same thing. I'll make this 3. I'll press and hold my Alt key, and then I'll click my H1, H1, H1 here, and then I'm gonna be pressing backspace and then 4. Once again I'll do the same thing for these tags as well. So I'll make this one as H5 and this one as H6, and we'll see how these tags are different from each other. So we have H1 to H6 here. Let me save it, and you can see that the H1 is the biggest one among these in size, H2 a little smaller, then comes H3, then H4, H5 and then H6. So there are 6 heading tags. I'm going to be choosing H3 because this looks like a right choice for me for, say, e-commerce website that I'm going to be building. So I'll use this H3 tag. So I'll get rid of this H2. I'll press Ctrl/ on my keyboard to comment this out, and this is, by the way, HTML comments. Now you'll think that what this comment in HTML is. Now whenever you write code inside your HTML file and you want to temporarily disable some lines and you want to see those lines once again, you can comment those lines. Or you want some lines not to execute, not to get parsed by your browser, you can use this. You can use the angular opening bracket and then exclamation mark, double dash, and once you do that, you are inside a comment. So I'll say this is a comment, and if I save and I go back to my web page, you'll see that I have this is H3 written and nothing else. But if I don't wrap this inside a comment, you can see that I have this is a comment and this is H3. So if I want this is a comment to not get passed by my browser, I will have to enclose it inside this. This is part of HTML markup language, and you are gonna be using it often while you create your websites. So this is the first thing that I wanted to tell you. Then comes a paragraph tag. So I told you about heading tags. Now we'll use a paragraph tag and we'll write a paragraph. So writing a paragraph tag is as simple as writing a P. Just write a P, press enter, and Visual Studio Code will do the rest for you. Now, most of you guys must be thinking that why am I using Visual Studio Code? Why not Notepad? Or why not Sublime Text? You can use any editor of your choice. Visual Studio Code is a nice, reliable, convenient source code editor for me, and I like it. I like the shortcuts, I like the feel, I like the look, so I'm using it. And the fact that I can autocomplete these things, the fact that I can hover over the elements and see what this element does and all those things is awesome for me. So having said that, I'm going to be writing some content inside my paragraph. So I'll say this is content inside my paragraph. Ctrl S to save. And if I go back to my page, you can see this is content inside my paragraph. And I'll say this is paragraph heading. I can change this to this is paragraph heading. And you can see that I have this. This is paragraph heading. This is content inside my paragraph being shown. Now you can use right click and view page source to view the source code of this file, the exact source code that we have written. Ignore the source code as this is injected by live server extension that we are using. You don't have to worry about this code, but rest of the code is exactly the same code that we wrote along with the comments. I want to give you some warning here. If you are using comments to store some confidential information, do not do that, because in HTML, your viewers will be able to see your comment and they might look into your confidential information if you have written it inside comment. So you have to be very wise, you have to be very clever while writing these comments, because when you're writing these comments, they will actually be seen by different people who visit your webpage. So you will have to be very clever when you do that. Another thing that I want to point out here is that you might think that this web page is not looking as good as, say, YouTube homepage or say some other homepage. If you go to some website, I'll just say website and I'll open some website, and you can see that these websites are pretty good. They look very fancy, they have colors, they have design. We'll get to that, and that is done using CSS. So we'll see how to design a website that looks like this, how to add images and all the good stuff. But the very first step in learning web development is this thing, the basic HTML. Now you can see that the title of this document is just document, and we want to inject something here. So what I'll do is I will write this is title. Control S to save. And without reloading, you can see I have this is title being shown here. So this is the title of the web page, and this is how HTML works. So once again, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It contains a series of tags which are used for different kind of purposes. For example, we use heading tag for specifying headings, paragraph for writing paragraphs. We have table tags, we have image tags, we have anchor tags. We'll look into these tags later, but HTML elements are represented by tags, and that's the gist of it. Now, HTML elements are used to tell your browser, hey browser, you have to display this thing in this fashion. This is a way of talking to the machine, talking to a program which is web browser. We want to tell a web browser that, hey web browser, we want to do this, we want to execute this, we want to see, or this is paragraph heading here, we want to see the content here, and we want to see an image here. All those kind of talks that we do with the web browser are done in a language called HTML. HTML is not a programming language, it is a markup language. It is the structure that we tell and that we create using markup language, and we show it to our browser for it to interpret it further. I hope it makes sense. We started our discussion talking about this doctype HTML, which tells our browser that this document is written in HTML5. Then we have this HTML tag, which is used to which holds the entire HTML document. Then we have head, which contains the heading, the title, all the style sheets that we add in the future. All the meta tags are contained inside head tag. Now the meat of a page, the thing that we see is inside a body, and this body is closed here. Now if you're using Visual Studio Code, you can collapse your body, you can collapse your head, you can collapse this HTML tag as well, and you can see other tags. So this feature of code folding helps a lot when you have a lot of lines inside your code. You can click like this to open it once again, and you can click this to collapse it. So you can open body like this, then you can close body like this, head like this. You can keep closing and opening. So these are the most crucial tags that an HTML document has to contain. Now we'll talk about the tags that we can use inside body, and they are H1 tag, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Then we talked about paragraph tag, and we saw how these tags are rendered by our browser. So talking about the basic syntax, the basic syntax goes like this. So you have some tag, and then you have the closing tag, and then you write something inside this tag. So this is the opening tag, this is the closing tag. The tag can be H3, tag can be anything. I just wrote this tag to mean H1, H2, H3, P, or any other tag that you'll use. So this is how the basic syntax of HTML looks like. Now that we know that only the content inside body is displayed by the browser, we can start writing our web page inside a body tag. So you can start off by writing comments, or you can start off writing some tags, and as in when you type the tags, your page will keep changing if you're using live server. One thing to note down is all live server is doing is to reload your page whenever you save it. If you save this page gets reloaded. That's it. You don't have to use live server always. You can always open this file like this using Google Chrome and you should be good. But I'm using this extension because I'll get this feature of live reloading whenever I change my page. Another thing I want to point out here is that you can use anything. You can use Notepad to edit your HTML file and you should be good. But I'm using Visual Studio Code as it helps in developing complex websites. It gives you a lot of features. You can save a lot of time that would have rather spent in typing a lot of code. You can use Emmet abbreviations. I'll talk more about Emmet abbreviations soon. Alright guys, so now we know basics of HTML. I'm gonna be erasing all of this and we'll just keep one comment and we'll say our website starts here, and then I'll have a heading. I'll change it to what is HTML. I'll say HTML is the language of the web. It stands for hypertext markup language. And I'll keep on adding few tags here and I'll keep on explaining you what those tags mean. So I'm going to be starting off by anchor tag and I'll say A, but before that let's see how our website looks now. It looks like this. Let me capitalize this W, and now I'll introduce you to anchor tag. And anchor tag, like all the other HTML tags, most of the HTML tags has an opening tag and a closing tag, and inside these opening and closing tags we have something. So I'll say click here to go to Google. So I'll say click here to go to Google. I'll simply press Ctrl S and you can say you can see click here to go to Google is here. Now let us assume I want it to be clickable. You must have seen these links wherein when you click you go to a different website altogether. I want to create a similar effect. In order to do that, I'll be using anchor tag and I'll say href is equal to /google.com. In fact /google.com, or let me completely write this address, https www.google.com. Now you must have noticed something strange here, that I've written something inside of the tag. So this is called attribute. In order to add some more information to the tag, we use something called attribute, and we keep on adding these attributes like this. For example, I have used href attribute of anchor tag. Href means where to go when I'm clicked. So if I go to this web page and I click here, I'll go to google.com. I can use back button to come back to my page. So this is what href pretty much does. Now I can specify something called target and I can make it _blank. And if I Ctrl S to save and I come back to the page, now if I click on this link, it'll be open in a new tab. So this is another attribute of anchor tag, wherein I can write _blank, and if you hover over target, it is telling me that the following keywords have special meanings. _self will do this, _blank will do this, _parent will do this. But for now, let's focus on _blank and let's keep this simple. We are gonna be using only 2 attributes of anchor tag for now, and we will move to the next tag. So the next tag that I'm gonna be using is the image tag, and image tag is really very interesting. Let me save this page and go to the web and grab some URL of an image. So I'll click on this image. I'll click on this image. I'll simply go to open image in a new tab. I'll copy the URL and I'll create an image tag. I'll say img and then I'll say src is equal to this link. And just to make things simple, I'll just click on this gear button and then I'll say command palette and I'll simply type toggle word wrap and I'll click on this. And this way I'll avoid seeing this horizontal scroll bar that was irritating me, so that you guys can see my screen. Now this is Visual Studio Code specific feature, so you don't have to worry much about it. Now when I type img, an important attribute of img is src, which stands for source. it means where to get the image from. And there is something called alt. Alt means what to show when the image fails to load. So let me type it, what to show. Maybe let me write image of website. So whatever you write inside alt will be shown if this image fails to load. Let's see this into action. You can see that this image is being shown up here. Now if I mess up with the URL, obviously this image will fail to load and you'll see this text. Now this is what this alt is about. So there are two attributes for IMG that are important. Number one, src, another one is alt. Now there are a lot of other attributes of different tags, and I recommend you go to the internet, search for these attributes, and you'll come to know more about them. But for now, these are the most often used attributes of IMG tag. I'll also get rid of this one just to keep things clean. And as you can see, let me also fix this URL. I'll fix this URL so that my image shows up. I'll get rid of this line, Control S to save, and you can see that this web page looks pretty decent enough, but not, you know, like google.com or any other website that you often visit. These websites are designed using CSS and JavaScript that are the next step. We'll definitely look into those on this channel, but for now we just want to learn basic HTML. Having said that, I'll add few more paragraphs. So I said, what is HTML? HTML is a language of the web. I might as well create another heading with H2 and I'll name it learning. So let us say I want to create a personal website. I'll say learning. And before that I'll name this title as Harry's personal website, and let us say this is the website that I want to use for all the personal stuff. Control S to save, and you'll see the title updated. You'll see learning section, and inside learning, let us say I want to learn web design and I want to write about HTML and all that stuff. I'll say, what is HTML? HTML is a language of the web. It stands for hypertext markup language. Let me Google search and I'll get some text from the internet. Wikipedia is a good place to start with. I'll copy this text, I'll put it here just to keep things simple and beautiful. Now it looks good, but I also want to see some more content. I want to see this, click here to go to Google here. I'll say that more on HTML here. I'll start another paragraph. I'll say more on HTML here, and I'll enclose this here with anchor tag. I'll say ahref is equal to, and I'll copy this link from here. I'll say HTML and I'll copy this link and I'll paste it here. I'll say more can be found here, and I'll enclose my, where is my here? It's here. Good. Now I'll remove this one. I hope I'm not confusing you with all the text that I've put up here. Let me reload this page, and you can see that what is HTML. First of all, I start with learning, then I say what is HTML, then I talk about HTML, then I say more on HTML here. The moment somebody clicks on here, they are redirected to this page where I have made a Google search and they can simply learn more about HTML. And once again, I can also say something like more on something else here. Let us say I want to also talk about CSS. I'll say more on CSS here, and I'll simply change this query to CSS, or you can also grab the link once again from Google. You can simply search for CSS, and once I search for CSS, I get this link which points to the Google search results from CSS. I'll say href is equal to double quotes and Control V to paste, Control S to save. Let me see how my website looks now. It looks pretty good. I have created a heading H2 tag, then I've created another heading. Let me see, is it an H2 tag or H1? Okay, it is an H2 tag. I have created an H2 tag, and then I've created an H3 tag, and then I've added a paragraph, and then once again I have added this hyperlink here using anchor tag. And I can keep on adding more hyperlinks. Then I used IMG tag to to show this image here. I can also use some other attributes from img to show this image more beautifully. I'll say 123 pixel, and then I'll say height is equal to 123 pixel. Control is to save. If I come back here, oh, 123 pixel is too small. Let me change it to, okay, I made it 12 pixel for some reason. 123 pixel, 123 pixel, and it shows up exactly the way I want it. Now you can change the width and height using the width and height attributes. I want to tell you that width and height are the attributes of img tag, and they'll not necessarily be available with other tags. So you have to be very careful with the attributes you are using. If the attribute does not belong to the tag you are using, then you might be into trouble. So since I know that src is something I can use with img and width and height is something I can use with img, that's why I'm using this thing. So I hope you get this. Now, one of the biggest questions that I get from the beginner HTML developers is that, should I use a double quote or should I use a single quote? And I'm gonna be throwing some light on that. If I use a single quote instead of double quote, you can see that it works. You can see that I can see my image here. Now I'll use the example of alt attribute from img. If I use a single quote and if I control s to save, and let me also change the URL so that it shows the alt text, you can see that my alt text shows up. Now if I add a double quote inside of it, I can see the double quote here. So if I'm using double quote inside of the text, I'll have to use single quote. And if I'm using a single quote inside, I should be using double quote. And my single quote will show up. If I use a single quote and a single quote inside, I might run into trouble. As you can see here, I am into trouble. My image, single quote, and all these things are not showing up. So you can use any of single or double quotes, but make sure if you're using single quotes inside, be sure to use double quotes. If you're using double quote inside, make sure that you enclose your text inside single quote. I hope that makes sense. Before moving ahead, I want to fix the URL so that my image shows up once again and my website looks good. As you can see that I have a learning heading tag here, then I have what is HTML here, then I have some content here, then I have some anchor tags here and an image tag here. Now I'll be talking about a horizontal rule. If you put HR like this and you control S to save, you'll find a line that looks something like this, and this is a horizontal rule that you can use to make these lines and to separate out content. For example, I'm using some other section. For example, this is learning, and I want to add something called to-dos. So I'll type to-dos, TODOS, and I want to separate these two sections. So I made a horizontal rule here, and I want to add a table here. So before moving towards table tag, I want to talk about BR tag. Let us say you want to break line. You want programs to start in the next line after embed. You can use something called BR. As you can see here. Now if I go to my web page, I'll see that I have a line break here. HTML tags, HTML can embed, and then I have a new line here. Now if I add some more BR tags here, I'll have some more new lines here. So I can keep adding these BR tags and I'll see these spaces. But again, I'll avoid these and come back to table. So HR is one, BR is one. BR will create a line break, HR will create a horizontal rule. These two are important HTML tags that can be used, and since these are the tags that do not need any closing tag, these are called void elements, and the ones that we use having a closing tag are called non-void elements. So H2 is a non-void element, H3 is a non-void element, paragraph is a non-void element, and then once again HR is a void, BR is a void, and IMG is also a void, and we usually add a slash just to indicate that this is a void element, although it is not necessary to include this, but again you can do that. So a void element will not have any content inside of them. So these are the void elements. Having said that, let's move further and let's talk about some more tags. I'm going to be talking about list before table because list is important, and when we are creating something called to-dos, we should be using lists. Now what is an HTML list? Let's talk about it. Now in HTML, list can be primarily of two types. One is ordered list and another one is unordered list. So if I write something called OL, this is a short form for ordered list, and I can add list items. So I can say I want it to be ordered, I want it to be numbered. I can say T, and then once again I can say burger, and then I can say something like let's say pizza. Control S to save, and let's see how it looks like. So if I use ordered list, I'll find this number 1, number 2, number 3 when I code. So when I use an ordered list, I find this number 1, number 2, these labels in my elements. So all the list items will be labeled if I'm using an ordered list. If I use an unordered list rather, I will see something called bullets. So let me use an unordered list. Let me call it UL instead of OL. And I'll have to close it with UL if I'm opening it with UL, and you can see that it changes to bullet points instead of numbers. So you can always change these to ordered and unordered. I'm going to be using ordered here because I want to see those number 1, number 2, number 3 written alongside the list items. Let me come back here and let me use an ordered list. OL, Control S to save. And the moment I reload this, I don't have to actually reload this as I'm using live server. Number 1 is T, burger, pizza, and let me say get T, and let me say from store. I'm just making it up. Now I'll show you something. If you add an attribute called type here, you can use these type attributes. You can use 1, you can use capital A, you can use these I's. Let me write capital A here and I'll show you what happens. You can see that number 1, number 2, number 3 changes to A, B, and C. If I change this to I rather, you'll see the Roman numbers being displayed. If I change it to capital I, you'll see something else. You'll see those Roman numbers written in capital I's. So this is a type attribute, and I want you to try out other type attributes that OL list has. So these were the two types of list in HTML. One was ordered list and the other one was unordered list. So let me write unordered list as well. And the moment I see my web page, it looks something like this. I have an ordered list and then I have an unordered list. Alright guys, so we talked about a lot of HTML tags and elements. Now let's talk about table tag, as it is one of the most important tags as far as HTML is concerned. Now let us say you want to store information of some employees, and let me start this right off using a heading. I'll say employees, Control S to save. Let me see how it looks like. I'll say employees. Now what I'll do is I'll start a table tag and I'll say table, and my table tag begins here. Inside this table I can start a table row which is indicated by TR. Now this might sound a little confusing if you are a beginner, but let me tell you, this is exactly the same template that you can use in the future. So once you get what I'm doing here, you'll be able to create your own HTML tables. Now I'll start a TH tag here. I'll say serial number, and then I'll say name, and then I'll say employee ID, or maybe department, and that should be good. We'll add 3 columns to this table. I'll start another table row, and this time my table row will contain table data. So it will not contain table heading. So I'll say TD. TD stands for table data. I'll say 1, and then name will be Harry, and then department will be, say, Python development. Control S to save, and let's see how this table looks like. Oh wow, this table looks like this. Let me add few more element entries to this table. Let me press Ctrl D, and I'm trying to add few more entries to this table. Number 2, number 3, Harry, let me call it Rohan, let me call it Steven once again, Steven, and let me call it C development. Let's just save and let me see how my table looks like. So this is how you can use tables in HTML. Now you can design these tables using CSS, and I will be walking you through CSS very soon on this channel. So if you haven't already subscribed, you can consider subscribing to this channel. This is all about tables. You can design your tables in a better way by using CSS, by adding some borders, by adding some colors. There are a lot of other things that you can do, but this is how a basic structure of table looks like. Moving away from tables, I will be talking a little bit about forms, as it is also one of the most important topics as far as HTML is concerned. So let us say you want to take some survey. I'll say H2, I'll say survey. I'll say please take our survey, please take a survey, Ctrl S to save, and I can start a form tag. Now there is an action attribute of form element, and this means where to take all the entries of this form once it is filled. Let us say I want to take it to fill.php. Now I don't want to teach PHP here, I just want to tell you that action means where this form will get saved. You'll have to write your custom PHP backend to save this form, but I'll be walking you through designing of the form. So if you write input type is equal to text, Ctrl S to save, you'll find let me also add this name here. You'll find this input tag here. So please take a survey name. You can say age, then you can say occupation, and then you can say income, and here is a form name, age, occupation, income. Just to remind you, you can use BR tag to add a line break. Ctrl C, Ctrl V, Ctrl V, Ctrl V, Ctrl S to save, and you can see that this is how a form looks like. You can use an input tag. You can also use a Textarea tag, which is used to add a lot of text. If you have a lot of text and you want to write a paragraph, maybe you can consider using a text area. So I'll say description, and I'll say text area, and name is equal to let us say text, ID is equal to text. Now columns and rows, as you can already guess, are the number of columns and the number of rows in your text area. So if I save this, you can see that we have 30 columns and 10 rows. Let me make it 5 rows so that our text area is short. And I'll show you one more thing. You can drag your text area and make it bigger, bigger and bigger, and this goes on. So this is how a text area is designed, and you can add text area in your HTML forms to take long inputs from the user, so that your user can type seamlessly without not being able to see the text. So this is how text area works. Now this was all about HTML forms. Now I want you guys to go to the internet and search for different HTML tags and different attributes and what all those attributes are doing there, because there are a hell lot of attributes. I cannot discuss each and every one here. I discussed the most important ones, and I wanted to just give you a quick start for the starting up HTML and designing web pages. This is something that is for beginners, and I want you guys to have this just as an entry point, not as an exit point from HTML. You guys must be going to internet after this video, and you should type HTML tags and attributes. And once you do that, you'll get a whole bunch of links, and all of these links are good. Believe me, believe Google. You can go to any of these links and you can start experimenting with these tags and start creating websites. Now that you know how anchor tag works, how paragraph works, how heading works, I hope this video was helpful. If this video was helpful, make sure to give me a thumbs up. And on the design part, let me tell you guys that I'm gonna be dropping out a CSS video very soon. So if you're interested, please let me know in the comments below, and make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel so that you get notified whenever I drop in the CSS video. Thank you so much guys for watching this video, and I will see you next time.